TartleCast Live. You are here with Jason Rigby, Chief Conscious Marketing Officer at Tartle, and CEO Alexander McCaig. That would be myself talking. Today, we want to go over questions that we receive from compliance officers or legal teams. And these are the three most commonly asked questions that we get. So we thought it'd be beneficial to just answer them live here, kind of knock it out of the way for those people that are curious. So, Jason, you want to take us through what the first question is, and we'll go over some details on it?
Yeah, what is the data and process flow from when a customer signs up to when they give consent, to the receipt of the data, to the delivery of the data?
Okay. So, technologically, and we're going to go over this flow in a second, you can go over some of the details. Technologically, what's happening in the system is that every step of the way, a data seller, someone who is a consumer or a patient who is vaulting their data into Tartle, the very first moment they sign up
Hmm.
with, and they do terms of service and privacy policy, that's the first level of agreement that's going on. Okay. At that level of
That's
contraction,
pretty common. Everybody has
very
that.
common.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to do it, right?
Right.
Standard practice. Where things become unstandard and where Tartle is essentially
Shines bright like a
shines
diamond.
brightly and gets ahead of, is in front of regulation, is helping lead it here, is that we educate and explain and request consented permission for them to share pieces of their data with us to
Mm.
build their initial profile. So during the initial sign up process, each step and every time a consumer is pressing yes or next to the element of like sharing a piece of data, a consent capture occurs. There's a record, a transactional record that shows an audible ID trail
Mm.
of them actually sharing that data with whatever that party may be.
I like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Okay. And then once they get into the system, we're going to get into your details here, but once they get into the system, each piece of data that got stored has a date timestamp.
hmm
When that data is shared, that record of consent and record of permission also goes with the data itself to the buying party. So, in a legal sense, you want to make sure that you actually have the rights to not only request this data
hmm
that somebody rightfully owns, but now you get to own that data as an asset, a copy of that data in time,
Yeah, that's important.
which is really
So
important.
it's like,
So the overall like holistic ownership of the data, right, longitudinally for a person, they hold that. But what they're doing is permissioning copies in time of their data, which now they are giving to you because the transaction's occurring. They say, I'll give you permission with my consent and the data for you to own this copy, but you have to give me a monetary reward in return, which is the cash that gets paid. That's how the exchange works here. Okay.
now, do you feel whenever you're looking at data in and of itself, because I want people to understand this from a philosophical point. What are we being stringent? Are we trying to do this from a compliance reason, or what is Tartle's philosophical reason behind doing this?
Yeah. So we didn't
I mean,
actually.
because we're going to get into the flow,
Yeah, we're gonna get in
but
the
I want people
flow.
to understand the macro.
Yeah, so we wouldn't have been able to design the technology the way it was if we didn't start under the principle of putting the consumer or the data seller or the patient, whoever you want to call it, in 100% control. We recognize that people who create the data are the ones that are the owners of it.
Yes.
So what we did is we designed a technology that mirrors that mechanism of ownership. Like these words which I'm speaking right now, these are my words
hmm
and they're being stored in the airwaves, much in the same respects as somebody is speaking and then storing their data in a vault, which they're the rightful owner of. They've generated that data. So now what we've done is we've created a marketplace technology that allows for the capture, the copying, the transfer, and the monetization of that data with an auditable record of where it came from. So there's provenance over that specific thing.
Yeah,
And so
that's an
we
important
didn't we
word. Yeah.
didn't lead with compliance. What we wanted to do is we wanted to put the consumers in the driver's seat and empower them to the nth degree. So much to the fact that the data is obfuscated from Tartle. We have no control over it. We can't see it. And when we did that, it put us ahead of what these compliance or regulatory statutes were in place around how data is managed. Because instead of Tartle doing the management of Jason's data, our philosophy is that people should be self-responsible for their own data management. And when they do that, they have the ability to permission that data anywhere they like, unrestricted.
100%. Yeah. No, I
Okay.
love that.
Is
Yeah.
that funny to you?
Yeah, it is. We have a board with
That's great.
fun stuff on there.
Love the noises.
Yeah. So let's go through the flow. And because I want people to understand initial sign up, you kind of talked about that a little bit before. User authenticates through TARTLE Data Vault Connect, OAuth 2. So, they're on the site, boom, they click the button.
Yeah, there's tokenized aspects of what's going on here. We know that there's a direct permission, token shared, verified. We know that that person's
A
coming
unique
in.
identifier.
It's very unique to that one individual.
And then basic profile setup and verification.
Okay, so and like I had stated in that process, as they're setting up their basic profile, Tartle has to buy that from the members. We don't just get it for free because we can't create a loophole around our technology, but that profile is required to make people attractive or to qualify them for the people that are demanding that data. So
And then-
again, we take the same steps that happens in a transaction, also happens during the sign up process.
Yeah, I love that. And then the next is the secure wallet creation for compensation.
Yeah. So the whole account, like we said, is cryptographically secure even from Tartle. We don't have the PIN. We have no control over people's wallets or the storage of their data. That's completely up to them. Okay.
And then next is that's the initial sign up. Next is the consent process. User, I'm going to go through these and then you can talk about them. User views available data deals.
Yes.
Each deal presents clear scope and compensation, granular consent options for specific data types, independent consent tracking per deal, and then a blockchain record created for each consent decision.
Yeah, this is really important. Nothing is obfuscated when it comes to what is being requested of a data seller, like what data people want from them. It is very clear who the buyer is, what the buyer is using it for, the price they will receive for the permissioning and sharing of that data to that party, the copy of that data. That's all in place. And the data seller has every right to either accept the offer being requested of them with those characteristics you stated, or they have the ability to deny it. So they're not putting some automatic process. There's no default on for them. All those choices are in place for them to choose.
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
Even the mechanic of preference for things they choose to participate in, that's even in their control. It's not like Tartle automatically chooses who they're going to be selling their data to. It's all up to the consumer's choice. So there's no forcing of hand on our side. So no matter what occurs, the data creator, the data seller is always in control.
Yeah, and then the next would be data collection. It's triggered only after explicit consent. We talked about that. Data gathered based on deal specifications, real-time validation and quality checks, and then metadata tagging for tracking.
Yeah, so this is a good point. In order for the buying company, the buyer of the data, to receive it, the funds have to clear in escrow on Tartle. We have to make sure that IDs are matching up, that right data set that's getting permission gets stored and teed up appropriately, and it's getting transmitted over to the appropriate buyer in their wallet. Okay. So there's a bunch of steps that have to go in place before that person even receives that data itself.
Yeah.
So there's a whole other system of checks and balances to make sure the right data is going to the right party.
And then data delivery. So we have secure transmission through encrypted channels, API delivery with authentication, transaction completion recorded, and then compensation distributed to the user wallet.
Yeah. So again, you're describing a little bit of the process I talked about because I jumped ahead. But again, two wallets are interacting between buyer and seller. One is that the store of value is being transferred and the asset is giving back to the other group. Okay. This can either happen in a self-service terminal, or it can be done through our API system if you want to do just server to server call. And the record of data that is received comes with not only the pseudo-anonymous identifier of the account holder that shared the data itself, but also the date timestamp of when it occurred, and the encrypted, also the auditable record of the data provenance. So if a regulatory authority comes to a group that has source data, whether it's data with personally identifiable information or non-PII on data sellers, and there's a question about the legality of how it was sourced or was owned, there's a provable record of the permission of that data given to them, a copy of that data in time.
I love
So
that.
every time you purchase, that also comes with it.
So do you feel like whenever you're looking at, and this is where I want people to understand on consent management, and we'll go like deal specific, and we'll just do each deal A and deal B, so
Hmm.
people understand this. Each deal has separate consent records. Users consent to deal A while declining deal B.
That's correct.
Consent withdrawal rights maintained per deal, and then withdrawal affects only that specific deal. Now, let me get into what people understand is withdrawal rights, and then you can explain this. Yes, users can rescind consent for deal A independently.
That's what I said. So remember we said we designed this so the data sellers in full control.
Mhm.
They don't want to share, or if they have already subscribed to sharing data, right, over some period of time, they can say, I'm all done.
And then that withdrawal does not affect other active deals.
No.
Historical data handling follows compliance rules, and then a clear process for consent revocation.
Yeah. So each data seller and each data element they share, those are mutually exclusive in deal factor to the
Mm,
buyer on the buy side of the market. So I can have deal A
mhm.
as a data seller with 15 data elements. And I can have deal B with the same mechanics, but when I rescind on deal A, say for instance, the data seller is done sharing it with a large company, they no longer like the way they operate, and they said, I'm
Yeah, I'm done
philosophically
with
not
these
aligned.
people. Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to deal with them, but that does not rescind what is going on with deal B. They're exclusive of one another. So just because a data seller chooses to share something, when they share, that's an independent agreement with that one buy side entity. It's not across the board with all entities.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's finally look at digital consent trail. So we have the blockchain based recording.
Hmm.
Each consent action recorded on the blockchain, immutable timestamp for all consent changes, unique transaction IDs for each consent. We've already talked about that.
Yes.
Smart contracts manage consent status, and then transaction linkage. And this is important. Consent records tied to specific data transactions, unique identifiers, uh, consent to data transfers, complete chain of custody documentation, and real time status tracking.
Yeah, that's correct. So no matter what, if one data seller has an agreement with 15 other deal makers, people that come in to buy it, you'll be able to see the transactions that are occurring, the permissions and consent from pseudo anonymous identifier of wallet address one with all these different other deal types that are occurring.
It's like 15 different companies would want to buy my profile
That's correct. And
information.
you'll be able to track every single
Each
time
15, yeah.
each of those 15 where it
Right.
went from, and to verify the fact that you got this data with its original file, right? With this audit trail record back from this person at this time.
Yeah, and that's timestamp of consent, the grant, the withdrawal, whatever it may be,
Right.
on that. And then the scope of the consent given, the data types included, transaction identifiers, all of that.
Mhm.
And then finally, audit production. Um, this is something that I feel like the transaction history. How is that like
Yeah, very
as a
good.
company? Like, what do I get?
Yeah. So if you're on the buy side, you'll be able to see everything you've ever purchased. You'll have your full database of data copies that you
Mhm.
have requested from people that you've bought on the exchange. You'll have all the date timestamp, all the audit
So
trail
it's chronological.
information,
Yeah.
all of that's in there. And the cool part is to take it a step further, because those identifiers are in place, the data buyer also has the ability to go back to certain subsets of people to source that data from them.
That makes sense. Yeah. So, into close, full compliance with privacy regulations,
Mhm.
clear consent withdrawal mechanisms, complete transaction accountability, robust audit capabilities, and user data sovereignty.
Yeah. And here's the cool part about this: no one's done this in the data world.
No.
I mean, healthcare has done it in HIPAA for like the management of healthcare data from firm to firm. But now no one's ever taken the lead to create a technology that shows provenance, ownership, auditability of data from a consumer,
Mhm.
and a consumer sharing that back with so many different independent businesses.
That's so cool. Yeah.
So that's why TARTLE is actually leading in the regulatory framework. We're guiding where those principles are headed because it's so consumer powered.
Yeah. I think it needs.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, very, very good. I like that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's really nice. It's really good. So those are our, you just want to go over. So those are our top three questions we typically get from compliance or officers or legal teams. You just want to highlight those one more time for us,
Yeah, yeah,
Jason?
yeah. I'll give them all three of them. So we answered what is the data and process flow from when a customer signs up to when they give consent to the receipt of the data to the delivery of the data. When a person consents to deal A and does not provide consent to deal B, Do they have a right to rescind consent on DLA?
Correct.
And then last question we answered is, what is the digital data that confirms consent, and how is this captured, tied to each transaction, and produced for an audit trail?
Yeah. And for any of those of you that are listening that really want to nerd out in the future, we will have our chief technology officer on to talk about all the nitty gritty
Mhm.
mechanics between encryption and audit trail. So you guys can get a nice little nosebleed out of that.
That's so exciting.
Super exciting. Yeah, great. Thank you so
I
much.
love it.
I appreciate it. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at TartleCast Live, and we will be back with you guys soon.
There we go. On to the next episode.